name is Nozibusiso Sibiya. I am a sports journalist from South Africa. I specifically cover women's football across Africa, and I cover para-athletics as well. And now I'm going to introduce you to my panel, which are women that are doing very amazing things in women's football in different countries. First, we've got, I'm going to be speaking a bit slow today because I understand that we've got a multilingual audience. So as someone who's fluent in English, I'm just going to try to accommodate everyone. And also, please don't judge me on some of my pronunciations. First, we've got Nüket Küçükel. I think I pronounced that right. She worked at Fenerbahce before, and she has been she's been key in implementing a women's football strategy in Turkey, and she was actually the first woman that was elected to work at the federation in Turkey. And then secondly, we have got Patricia Rodriguez Barrios, who is the first woman in history of Spanish men's football to hold the position of manager of a club in the Spanish First Division League. And then lastly, we've got Madeleine Penfold, a pioneer in the way of which athletes and fans are portrayed. She's a sports photographer, and she's going to tell us more about why she chose sports photography as a whole. Nüket, I'm going to start with you. As someone, obviously, who was first elected to work in the federation in Turkey as a woman, how was that experience for you?
Thank you very much. Let me first start stating my position. I'm the ambassador of Turkiye in Madrid. As you said, I'm a combination of public and private world. I started my career as a diplomat when I was 21, and after 17 years, I became a business person. So while I was a business person in the world of money, I found myself in Fenerbahce, in the board. In Turkey, unfortunately, like any other country, the sports clubs are having their financial problems. So that's why in the boards, the presidents would like to have business people and the professionals, so that I was one of those who doesn't understand from offside. But at the other side, I was at the strategy part of the whole show. But then I was elected as the vice president of Turkish Football Federation after 99 years as a first woman. So that's how I met with the women football in Turkey. When I was briefed about the situation on this women football, I found out that it was an amateur league, still an amateur league, with all the football players, women football players, having this professional way of seeing things. But the thing is, it's an amateur league, the professional way of playing, so it doesn't suit each other. So we had to put a strategy. A short to medium to long-term strategy. So, first, we wanted to have a roadmap to the half professionalism and then to full professionalism. Now, my successor is here with me, so I could create the awareness about football, women football, while he has put the structure, let me say, the procedures, how we are going to do it, and inshallah, next year we are going to be okay with the half professionalism. In 2 years' time, he is going to be fulfilling full professionalism. But the thing is, it was the easiest part. So all the clubs in Turkey, the famous ones, they all have women departments. But the thing is, the women players cannot go to the pitch after the men, because they were ruining the grass, whatever it means. So the thing is, it means we had an infrastructure problem. Where are they going to find a nice stadium to play? Second, That stadium has to have all these camera systems for broadcasting. So broadcasting means sponsorship. Sponsorship means money. Money means revenue. So that's why we had to just create those awareness one by one. But if you ask me what was my endeavor was, the actors of the women football were all men, and I hated that idea. So now we have a woman technical director. All the associates are women, and this, the actors, we are changing them to one by one to women. Hopefully, we are going to have more women referees in the pitch. And all the boards that have women members are helping them to create that awareness as well. So this is the negative aspect. But the positive aspect is we did not have to discover the moon once more time, because you all have the surveys of UEFA, you have the surveys of FIFA, you have the reports of both institutions who laid down all the procedures, all the normatives about women football and what could be done. So we use those as well. So far, so good. We are doing okay. Right, my dear predecessor? We are doing okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear that because, like I said, I'm from South Africa, and we actually have a player from Namibia who plays in Turkey, so I can say that you are actually in the right direction. And moving on to you, Patricia, obviously, talking about introducing women into the leadership space and into the women's football space, as a woman in leadership who's been there for 17 years, how important is it that we introduce women into these leadership spaces, especially in women's football?
I think that it's very, very important. Good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be at home. As you mentioned, it's very important to have women in leadership because I think that we understand better than no one how a woman feels. But it's also quite typical not find that type of helping from other women. So I think that we need to work a lot, especially women, to facilitate that itinerary and try to help the others coming after. Additionally, I have worked always in traditionally men's football clubs. So I have, and when I have listened to you, I have noted and I have thought that when I started in football, around 2014 year in Eibar, I remember when it was something special to use the men's dressing room, because it was like something, I don't know, sacred. Yeah.
As if going to church.
That's true. That's true. It was like she's saying. So, and the truth is that the first match that Eibar women's team played at Ipurua, at the main stadium, it was something special. It was the first time playing there, and it was it was not permitted to use the dressing room. So something that now we are thinking about it, and it's like, what? It's impossible to think it. So, and that situation was 80 years ago, not so much time. So I think that we have a long road to continue doing, but I think that we need to put in value the steps that we have, the road of steps that we have done, and for that I think that it's especially needed women in leadership, and this is something that has not changed, because I think that all of us can notice that the visibility or the minutes in TV or in media newspapers are higher than 8 years ago regarding the women's football, regarding the pitch. But the role, the leadership role, the general managers in sports institutions, in clubs, in federation, in Spain, I think that it's more or less the same than 10 years ago. So we need to force it and try to have voice and main paper in the board of directors, which is the place in which the decisions are taken. So very important to be in the decision-making process are done. So board of directors and general manager position, we need to continue working for achieve those positions.
No, thank you very much. And you are doing a very important job because as a woman in football, I can tell you now that when you start in the game, like even now, I think I've got about 10 years experience. And whenever I tell someone, a man especially, that I'm in football, they always ask me to name 500 players because I can't be a woman and be in football. So having women like you who are leading the way for us, it then makes it easy for us to continue. And then now moving on, I would think that as a photographer, obviously, since you started with men's football and then you moved on to women's football, what was different in terms of like the photography that comes from there? Do girls suffer maybe from any insecurities, I would say, because women's football is only starting to be professionalized now?
So what was the difference between
Men
the men's and the women's?
And women?
Yeah, great question. And thank you everybody for sticking around for the final talk of the day. So I started photographing the men's team about 8-9 years ago now. And at that time, I was one of the only female photographers, which, to be completely honest, didn't bother me at that time. I was just happy to be there. And it wasn't until a few more situations on set that I noticed I was one of the only females in the room. And then as I started to get deeper into the space of photographing male footballers, photographing male athletes, I came to realize that women's teams did exist, but they were so small at that time, sort of 8 years ago. Like Manchester United hadn't yet developed a team. The other WSL teams had just started up, but their social media, their following, the attention that was given to the women's team as opposed to the men's was like, you know, men's up here, women's down here. So I started to volunteer my own time and ask, can I go and shoot for the women's team? And the clubs, Manchester United, which was the club that I worked closest with at the time, they had a really amazing woman who worked there, and she was really supportive of me wanting to go and work more with the women's team. And what I noticed was that as there was more focus and more attention going into the women's game, what would happen is that clubs would invite them to the men's shoot, and they would sort of just piggyback the women's shoot onto the end of the men's campaigns. But what was happening is that the girls weren't really given a briefing. They weren't really given the time. They weren't really given like the attention that they need. Like, for example, how the photo shoots usually happen, and people might already know this if you work with players or you work in clubs. The guys will go and do their training at the start of the day, and after training, they'll shower, they'll get changed, they'll maybe do their yoga, they'll eat, and then they rock up to the photo shoot and they're like, okay, what do I need to do? So think about a male football player after he's had a shower and trained. Like, he's pretty fine stepping in front of the camera. Now think about any women that are in the room. Imagine if you'd just done an intense training session, got out of the shower, and then you flung on a set. No hair, no makeup, no time to do anything. Like, the approach and the care and the thought wasn't there at the start. And I could notice on set, because as well, when you work as a photographer, if you have access to players, it's likely that other photographers, other production companies have been invited in because the brand or the club will want to maximize that time with the players. So as a photographer, I could see players arriving at other sets, and I would see the way that mostly male photographers would approach it, and the clubs would approach it, and it was just a lack of care, a lack of any sort of space and consideration given to the girls. So watching this, I took a very different approach because I could relate to it. Like at that time, I was kind of a similar age to the girls. So I was thinking, if I was you, like, this is what I would want, or this is how I'd be feeling. So yeah, to come back to the question, the main difference is that I feel like with the women's players, you should really be asking them, you know, what do you need to feel comfortable? What do you believe in? Like, understanding more about them as an athlete as well, because there's such a variety of players in the women's game, which is amazing. And capturing them in a way that's truthful to who they are, I think is so important. And that's not to say that we shouldn't do that for the men's, we should. But I'm really big on an individual approach and really caring about who that player is, what they stand for, and how best to make them feel comfortable.
Oh, thank you so much, and I think you're doing very amazing work, because my brother works in grassroots, and he works with a lot of girls, and he was saying a lot of girls tend to stop playing football at a certain age, like when they get to 15, 16, because the body is changing. So they start feeling like a bit insecure, which will obviously contribute to doing photo shoots and things like that. Because I remember when women's football started having photographers, then you'd have the pose as the same as men's, and sometimes it doesn't work because the body is different, right?
Yeah, exactly. There was a lot of, I mean, it's changing now, which is amazing. But for the first few years, I don't know if anyone else felt the same. When I was seeing photographs of female footballers, it was a lot of arms folded, shot from below, hair scraped back, like just, we hadn't like really translated it from the approach that worked so well for the men's game. Now it's changing, and we're seeing a lot of cross culture into fashion and beauty and all these different things. And I think what's amazing, and we spoke about this earlier, is that when I was growing up, I'm a kid of the 90s, so it was a lot of like Spice Girls and skinny models, and you know, that was the North Star of what I saw on TV. Whereas now, I think like female athletes are so big, and they're celebrated for their achievements, not just for what they physically look like. But obviously, as a young girl, you're going to be looking at, well, what does she look like? How does she act? How does she behave? And we have such a variety of female players, which is amazing, because one girl might see themselves in Alexia, and another girl might see themselves in a Lauren James, and somebody else might see themselves in Barbara Banda, and you've got all these different types of girls that a younger person could look at and think, yeah, cool, that could be me.
Yes, which is very important. I remember during the Women's Africa Cup of Nations, when South Africa won, there's Nomvula Khowane, who's a football player in South Africa. She literally ran and took her lipstick and she started applying it. So she was called the Lipstick Lady, and she started doing campaigns with brands because of that. So it's very important that we represent people for the people that they are as well. But also talking about safe spaces, as someone who created the women's football strategy, how do we create a safe space in football, in girls' football especially? Because I remember growing up in South Africa, there were a lot of campaigns. I played cricket as a child. I wasn't good, but I played. And when you play sports, it almost like creates a safe space for you, that whatever is happening at home, at least you are taught to be confident, you are taught to be a team member. How important is using women's football to create safe spaces for women?
Creating safe spaces is a very important component of the whole issue. But before that, I would like to dwell into another aspect of football. I am amazed with its power to change, transform the mentality of the society. In our countries, we have very developed parts. We have very let me say, rich regions, while there are some parts not so rich, not so developed, let me say. So there's this discrepancy between those regions. With football, especially with girls' football, you can transform this mentality, and you can just make them fight in the pitch, create their self-confidence, and then prepare themselves for the life. So this is so important. The impact of football, just with a ball, with two sticks, creates miracles. That's why football is not only football. So, create safe havens for them. As we have been talking inside, there are some issues in my mind, in my world, that they don't have any frontiers, sin fronteras, as we call. Women issues, domestic violence, child abuses, they are the malicities of this world everywhere. So, how we are going to be protecting them? We are going to be creating safe havens for them first by recruiting women to take care of women. Mothers, they are the ones who are taking their little girls to the pitch. And there are some surveys, as you know, women are the ones who are deciding which car to buy, which restaurants to go, what kind of activities are going to be done weekend as a family. So they are the ones who choose friendly atmosphere, which is women football games for their children. We have to include every component, every woman, be it a housewife, be it a mother, be it a decision maker, be it a cleaning lady, to make sure that our girls are safe and sound. Not only our girls, boys are safe and sound. So the solution is always human resources. We have to take care of our children with us.
Thank you so much, and that is very important. I remember growing up in South Africa, there was an initiative called Love Life. They had sports, they had reading classes, and one of my friends, I'm not going to say her name, there was a domestic violence issue at home. So that space was a space where she felt safe, and then she could go home, and then she knows that she had a safe space. And then she grew up to be very, very successful because there was someone that was telling her that you're not going to be like the results of whatever is happening at home. But now moving on to you, Patricia, as a woman obviously in leadership, when we talk about safe spaces, because you are one of the people that make decisions, what are the challenges that you have faced along the way when it comes to making decisions in the boardroom?
So for safer spaces and for human resources also, we need to invest a lot in the development, because I think when I remember the first years in football leadership, and I remember the resources invested in women's teams, not only in the first team, also in the teams in the base, were less than they invested in the academy, in the men's academy. So that means that many resources like someone who attend the players, the spaces to create safe spaces, also psychologists to help players, to help women's. It was not expected for women's team, only for men's team. So some years later, I think that the last years when I was working for a club, that changed, because the resources invested in men's and women's team, not in the first women's team, but in the rest of the categories of the men's team and women's team, were quite or more or less the same, because it was very important for the club develop that kind of values and try to help their athletes, even if there were men or women, to develop their career not only from a sporting perspective, also from human perspective. And in some cases, we had the opportunity and the chance to view like women's, some players from women's team, as they knew that they hadn't the opportunity to live the rest of their lives from the money earned from football. They were developing their careers with the help of the club and with the resources and the itinerary that the club developed for them, helping with some internship in the club, helping with some issues with in one of the cases that I can remember, helping with some issues that that player had at her home with her parents. And now is the day that she's thinking in finish her career in sports level, in the top category of football. And now she's preparing herself to be a future women leadership, trying to manage a sporting organization. So I think that from club perspective, we need to invest resources, invest money in develop those areas and those values and facilities for help them with safe places and also with other resources to develop as humans.
Thank you very much. That is actually very important because, like, talking about psychology as well, like, you find that people grow up in different environments, and then when they get to a certain club, they've got certain behaviors that need to be dealt with a psychologist, for example. So if a club has a psychologist or a club has a financial coach, then they're able to make the right decisions with the help of the club. But also, moving on to you, Madeleine, like, looking as a photographer now, what's the most important thing, especially when working with women? Let's say you're working with someone with insecurities. For example, like you said, you mentioned Spice Girls. I love Victoria Beckham. And I used to be petite, and then I grew up, I had a child, and then my body changed. And I always thought, like, people on TV need to be petite, right? And then you get to that point where you're like, oh my God, am I even needed here, you know? So as a photographer, what is your role in that, in helping someone with their insecurities?
Yeah, I actually just wrote a whole workshop on this because I'm doing a workshop tomorrow, 10 a.m., if anyone wants to come, all about photography and working with female athletes. So there's a number of things that I wrote down. It's probably the first time that I've actually tried to articulate and bring everything into a written format of what I do, because so much of it just kind of feels natural, and it's through, you know, thinking about how I would feel in that situation and then being able to relate to it, and also being in those environments for so long. Like, I did a season with United Women where I really learned, like, what it was like. Well, I think I know what it was like to be amongst the team, and, you know, travel with them and be amongst the friendship group. And I did the same when I went over to Kansas and spent time with Kansas City Current and Angel City. And I think, like, one of the most important things is communication. And, like, instantly when someone enters a room, it's like, okay, you've got to use your intuition here. Like, what is the energy of this person? Do they have time? Usually an athlete doesn't have loads of time. They want to be in, they want to be out, and the sort of person that they are anyway. Like, the mindset of an athlete is, I want to do, I want to be in, I want to be out. So I think telling them straight away, like, you know, thank you for being here. This is what we're going to be doing. This is how much time we've got together. Just, like, putting the boundaries out there straight away so they know exactly what's going on. I haven't mentioned the prep, actually, because usually you get a grand total of like 5, 10, 15 minutes with players to craft something beautiful and brilliant that they're going to be happy with, that the brand's going to be happy with, that someone's going to be happy with. So preparation is massive. So understanding why we're doing this photo shoot, what the player stands for, does the player have a team of people? You know, how can you build an environment around that player that they're going to be most comfortable with? So sometimes they might have a preferred stylist, makeup artist. How can you build this team around them so that when they arrive, automatically the first touch point, the makeup artist, the stylist, they're in the room and they're going to make them feel comfortable straight away. So preparation is key. And then when they arrive on set, like I said, tuning into how they feel, and then having a lot of visual cues as well, like printed out things of, here's what we can try, here's what we can do. Sometimes someone comes in the room and you can just tell straight away they don't need a lot of direction, like, I'm just going to let them go. Sometimes they want really clear direction. Other times, if there's like a handful of players, I think it's amazing to let them work with each other. I also really like shooting with a really small camera, because then I can give them the camera and they can shoot it themselves. And I can just, sit back and sort of watch the show unfold. No, but I think also everybody takes pictures, right? Like, what did teenage girls or girls in their 20s, 30s like doing. Like when they hang out and they're having fun, they're taking pictures of each other. So giving them that autonomy to do it themselves. Yeah, what else did I write down? Music is a big one. Creating the vibe. And then showing them as well.
Yes.
You know, you've created images on set. They've given you that time. They've been open enough to give you that time. So I think feedback is really important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's some pictures of you. Do you want to see? What do you think? And then they'll be like, oh no, I want to fix this, and then let's go again. You kind of build their trust that way, and then they want to go again. So that their buy-in as well, their buy-in to the picture and what we're creating, I think is really important.
Thank you very much, and I think you are doing such amazing work. Just to warn you, I talk a lot, so please let me know if I'm running over. Do we have any questions on the floor? Any questions on the floor? Okay, it seems like we don't have questions on the floor, so we have more time to talk. I just wanted to ask, like I said when we started, there's another Coleman in Turkey. There are other players that are coming from other countries. What is Turkey doing right in terms of actually taking players from other countries to play in the country?
Well, Turkey is a very big country and a regional power. We are talking about an 86 million population, out of which 50% is under 33 years old. Geostrategically, when you just envision the map, the world map, you are going to see that Turkey is in the middle of the whole show. So we are a bridge between Europe and Asia, but also we are neighbors to Middle East, to Iran, Iraq, Syria. Right over there we have Russia, and the Balkans we are having, and the Central Asia up over there. So with this 3-hour flight, we are able to reach this 3 billion people. Meaning that it is geostrategically, it's in the middle of everything. So we are having Istanbul. I don't find, I always have difficulty in finding the right adjective to just explain Istanbul. But Istanbul by itself is 18 million. Has been home to tons of civilizations. So the thing is, it's a center of attraction. So that's why all these football players, sports people, business people from various regions are coming to Turkey. That's why we have been talking again inside this cooperation, this mutual movement. Creates a synergy which is sustainable. It's not just for a couple of months, couple of years, but it is there for a long period of time. So that's why we are lucky. As you said, from Africa, we are having many players as well. Due to our strategy towards Africa, we are having more than 44 embassies in the continent. So these are the end results of being a regional power, a big power.
No, actually, you are doing a great job. Like I said, Zenetha Coleman is there, and we also have other men's players who are also playing in Turkey, and they're doing very well in the leagues. So it's amazing to see that. But also, Patricia, it's un-African-like for me to ask you about this, because in Africa we don't talk about money, especially as women. But what can we do to achieve equal pay in women's football?
To achieve?
To achieve equal pay.
Good question, and not easy to answer it. But I think that we need the first step, that is that we need to invest a lot. I'll share with you something happened 8 years ago, more or less, during the first edition of World Football Summit in the women's football panel. I remember that I took part in that panel, and one of the attendees asked me for my opinion about the lack of profitability of women's football. It was true, in that moment it was true. Maybe now it's true, but I answer him that to achieve something being profitable, you need to invest, to develop a plan, and to think in long term. Not expect to have benefits next year from starting the professionalization of the industry and of the women's football. Additionally, I answered him that I didn't know any less profitable activity than men's football until 2013 year, the year in which the Spanish government and La Liga agreed to start with the economic control, because the main part of the professional football teams competing in first and second division were in bankruptcy. So less profitable than that, I think, than women's football, it isn't. So the plan is to invest also in media, in newspapers, in TV, to increase the visibility of the women's football, to invite next women to achieve to be professional football, or maybe to practice football, and then obtain new sponsorship. I can remember in the panel before, one of the girls has told about the increase in, I think that America's girl has talked about the increase in the sponsorships coming not only from the men's team, also because the brands wanted to invest in women's values. So I think that to achieve that situation, we need before to invest and try to put and set some basis, some minimum salaries and some minimum conditions for professional players.
Yes, I agree with you. And I remember actually during the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, a lot of people in South Africa were watching the World Cup. And what I realized when I was looking at the starting lineups was that Spain was the only country that had only one player that was playing outside of the country, which was very, very impressive, because that means you're doing something right in women's football if most of your players are playing in your league and they actually win the World Cup. Now, the last question to you, Madeleine, talking about visibility. I know you're all about branding, you're all about visibility, you're all about visuals. How do we get... like when we talk about visibility and we talk about investments, how do we brand the women's teams to attract more sponsors?
Oh God, that's a big question. I think having star players is really important, and having players that stand for something. And I really believe, out of so many of the talent that I've spent time with and that I know of, when I say talent, I mean players, they all have things that they care about, especially in the women's game, because they've all come from a place where it wasn't the norm for them to make it. Like, the chances of them making it and being in a position that they are now was so slim. So most of the girls want to give back, they want to stand for something, they have things that they care about, and I think it's a case of agents, talent managers, brands giving the time and space to actually ask these players, you know, what are the stories that you want to be telling, because then you're going to create authentic partnerships. People are going to be way more invested. The players are going to be way more invested to spend time talking about things that they care about. That message is going to resonate more because it's coming from a place of truth rather than transactional investments, like, you know, some of the earliest campaigns and sponsorships and like brand partnerships in the women's game just kind of felt like, oh, we're a brand and we hear women's sports is hot, so let's put our name to it. But it just... something didn't really connect, and I think an amazing example right now, the first one that comes to mind is everything that the club Arsenal have done with their women's team and the things that they stand for, their authentic work in the community, the partnerships that they've done with people. They're just advocating for things that the world really needs and that's really truthful. And they don't compromise on taking certain partnerships because it's worth X amount. They'll only take partnerships if it's truthful, and that has gone volume. So in terms of investment and how to grow investment, yes, investment needs to be there. And I think having star players that really stand for something, earlier Tina mentioned having a Caitlin Clark in the WSL, we totally need that. I think having star players that really have strong things to say and brands working with them to elevate that message is what I think is going to create the most amazing campaigns and things that go from here to there.
Yes, I totally agree with you. Actually, in South Africa, we still struggle with sponsorship. During the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, even though the team made it to the last 16, most of the players actually have full-time jobs. So they go from work to training, which is something that is very, very challenging for them. And thank you so much to my panel, and thank you for listening to us. And now I'm going to be joined on stage. Oh, I'm going to leave the stage, but we're going to have Marian Otamendi, the founder and the CEO of the World Football Summit.
Because I know you're in a rush. I know she's in a rush. So, ladies, you've done a great job.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you so very much. Patricia, luego te veo. And Madeleine, I was looking forward to meeting you. So I shall see you later, okay? So you've been brilliant, Nozibusiso. You're a great moderator. So that's a wrap. I hope you had a great time. I think it's been. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, see you in Madrid. So I hope you have enjoyed the sessions. I think it has been a very insightful day. We come out with new ideas, fresh ideas. And now this is the end. That's a wrap. But we are going to be joining La Gabarra, which is a privilege. La Gabarra is the boat that Athletic de Bilbao uses whenever they win any cup, any major league, and they take the boat along the river. Okay, so we are going to go and have a picture taken there. That's a real privilege. And then remember that at 7 o'clock, we will be having the female leaders gathering by grades. And we will also be giving our honors to all these institutions that have made a huge contribution to women football. So that's it. That's going to take place from 7 to 9. And we will be welcoming you there, ¿ok? Así que nada, ya hemos acabado. Espero que hayan disfrutado. Ahora tenemos el privilegio, los que quieran venir con nosotros, de subirse a la gabarra. Nos sacaremos una foto de familia. Y luego de 7 a 9 tenemos el Female Leaders After Work, que nos lo ofrece Great y la Embajada Británica en España. Y nada, y ahí seguirá el networking. Así que espero que hayan disfrutado y muchísimas gracias.